Kia ora koutou and welcome. This is our main building. It's called The Hub and it's where staff and students meet and interact. We have a cafe here, there's a study area. It really is the main hub. And we are going to take you on a wee bit of a tour. Ron is going to be talking about the cultural aspects of the built environment and I'm going to be talking about some sustainability initiatives. So the built environment that we live within and we operate in is really important. So we talk about often in sustainability the environment, and we often relate that to being outside and the environment that we're in outside. But the environment that we're in inside has an integral effect on us. And there are many different sustainability lenses that we can see this environment through. So one of the first ones is, what is the impact that this building is having not only on the external resources, but also on the internal, on the people operating and moving through it. We can talk about the economy and finances of how viable has this been to build, and also the social aspects. So social sustainability, how do people move through this space? How do people interact? What is encouraged in this built environment? And we've done a bunch of sustainability initiatives to try and promote more sustainability within the space. And this is one example. So this is a green wall. This is full of live plants. And there's a couple of reasons why this has been introduced. The first one is that it's beautiful, right? And when we're talking about bringing the outside, external into the internal and the internal into the external, this is a way that we can start to remind ourselves and relate to the external environment that sometimes we might forget about when we're inside a built environment. It's also really aesthetically pleasing, and there is a lot of research done around nature and our connection with a living being, living things, that tells us that it's really good for human well-being. It helps regulate our nervous system, it lowers stress levels, and it really just makes us feel good. It can also, for me at least, reminds me about relating into something else, something bigger than myself, a bigger, wider ecosystem or organism that's operating around me. The other reason why this is so useful is that it helps filter and clean our air. Now, nature is so incredible because it does so many things for us for free. It just does what it does. And if humans can just allow nature to do what it does best, then that's when humans interact with the environment in a harmonious way. So this is filtering our air. It's just doing it right now. And that means that inside our built environment is a lot cleaner, a lot happier, a lot healthier for our bodies as well. So bringing greenery into the spaces can be one great sustainability initiative. And I'm wondering if you have any living plants inside your environment, perhaps at home or inside your workplaces, and the impact of the effect that that might have on you. We're going to look at some other sustainability initiatives, so come on a tour with me and I'll show you what else that we're doing here at Otago Polytechnic. So here is another initiative that we have here at Otago Polytechnic, and this is called the Free Goods Table, and we're going to take you on a tour around the back. It also includes food, it also includes clothing, and this is an initiative that we have set up to try and reuse things. So you may have heard about the different R's of sustainability. We've got reuse, recycle, but there's also other ones included in here, and that is refuse. So you could refuse to even take an item, such as a plastic straw is a really typical example, but you can refuse to use things. You can also look at repairing things, and this is an example of repurposing. So people don't want things, they're going to repurpose it, and students kind of come in here and have a look and take what they need. And it also links into our social sustainability. So at different points in our life and depending on our backgrounds, we have different access to resources. And that's true not just with physical items like this, but it's true in terms of the greater resources, in terms of water, for example, or access to adequate housing, or access to healthy, good quality food. So sometimes there's a bit of a disparity between what's accessible and what's not, and that links into social sustainability in terms of how do we bridge that gap between the haves and the have-nots. And that could be socioeconomic groups within one society. So that could be here in Dunedin, the varying levels of socioeconomics. But if we look at it on a global scale, it can also be between the developing nations or the developed nations. And what is the power dynamic, or what's going on there? So this is a way to repurpose things, which is good for the ecology. It doesn't end up in landfill, but it's also a social sustainability initiative of being able to offer more if you have access to it. So let's take a look around the back and see what we have. Just in the front here, we have blankets, pillows. That's quite handy because we're just coming into winter, so that'll keep somebody toasty. Ooh, if you want to go out in the town, you can. These are a little bit big for me, but can go head out in the town sometimes. Oh no, our food's around the back. Oh yeah. Ooh, some funky pants. We top here. And oh yeah, we've got some couscous, if you want some couscous. And yeah. Oh, and there's a freezer, I just got told by Leslie. Oh wow. Oh. Oh yeah, there is. Oh, should we see what's in the chiller? Oh, nothing in there. Oh. Oh, no freezer food today. No freezer food. Yeah, I might have to top it up. And this is also a nice space for students to come. There's a couch to hang out on. So, you know, bringing that sense of home or comfort or safety. So for people to be prosperous and to be able to learn and to grow as people, they need to feel safe. That is a really fundamental principle. And it's not just safe in terms of, your physical threats or being well fed or having a roof over your head, which is part of what this initiative is trying to do, but it's also safety in terms of social groups and fitting in and a sense of belonging. So not only are we trying to provide that physical safety, but also a sense of belonging where people feel connected and like they have a place that they can call home. So this is a great example of an educational piece that we have inside of the hub. And we know that with behaviour change, there's many aspects that influence why somebody decides to start changing their behaviour, or in other words, putting their knowledge into practice. And this piece is from an Otago Polytechnic student, and it starts to highlight the plastic in the ocean and the wider issue of plastic use in general. So take a look at what it is. This is called the Great Filter, and it is made from 810 tiles, each one representing 100,000 tonnes. Together they depict the estimated 8 million tonnes of rubbish entering the ocean every year. Now 8 million tonnes, it's hard to even quantify how much that is, but I can tell you that it is a lot. And this whole piece in total weighs 200 kg, which is about 440 pounds. And that represents how much plastic is entering the ocean try and guess. Every minute? No. Every few minutes? No. Every second. Okay, every second. Can you believe it? 440 pounds or 200 kgs worth of plastic. And it starts to raise this bigger question of like, where is all this plastic coming from? How does it enter up in the oceans? And that actually brings me back to some of the R's, right? I just talked about refuse. So if you can refuse packaging in the first place, that is going to be one of the best ways that you can reduce your plastic waste. It is possible that we can recycle plastic, but if you think about how many resources it takes to create it in the first place, then transport it to a recycling centre, and then the energy it takes to recycle it, actually recycling is just the end of the story. That is by no means the start of the story or the whole picture on what we can do and our part and how we are actually influencing it. So where does plastic come from? A multitude of places, and most plastic starts off as little micro beads or plastic beads, and then that gets melted down, put into molds, and then we use it for our bowls or for our drink bottles, for example. And some of these micro beads, they need to get transported, usually on ships. And these little beads are really good at rolling away and floating into the ocean. So lots of plastic beads enter up into the ocean. And unfortunately about that is that fish think that that's food. So they come along, gulp it, and then of course they end up with plastic in their stomach, which they can't digest. And the more plastic that ends up in their stomach, and this is birds included, the less space there is for water and for food and for actually being able to take on nutrition. So they actually die of starvation and dehydration. The other way that plastic enters into the ocean, of course, is if we throw it away and there's rubbish, it can end up in drains, all kinds of reasons. And so, yeah, we all have a part to play in this, because the majority of us are all using plastic at some point. So, yeah, this is an educational piece, and I wonder how you can start to think about using art or using creative pieces or using materials that might end up into landfill for a greater purpose in terms of how you can communicate your message. We're going to take a look at some other things that are going on in the hub here. And let's move to the cafe. This is Eden Cafe, and they've done a whole bunch of initiatives to try and lessen their impact, environmental impact. And we're actually going to talk to Grace, who is going to tell us a few things about what they have been doing. Cool. Okay, so we have Grace here, who works inside the Eden Cafe. Mm-hmm. We're going to ask her a few questions about some sustainability initiatives. I know that there is some stuff around the cups.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Been a big deal.
Yep.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that,
Yep.
please?
So we don't have takeaway cups at all. We've got a system where you can either have your coffee here, you can borrow a mug, or you can bring your own. We also have like a certain amount of keep cups with lids that you can borrow and take off campus. And we have a trolley, you bring it back, you put it on it. So we don't mind how long it takes you. We would much rather you take a cup, take a couple of days to bring it back than use a disposable.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And has there been any problems with people not bringing cups back, or how do you manage that?
We definitely go through a few cups, but we buy them from the hospice, so we don't really mind. We buy them quite cheap, and the money that we do spend on them goes into the community, so we don't really mind if we're spending a bit more. It's still less than we would be spending on disposable packaging, so
yeah,
it's fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, hospice is a second-hand shop. So
it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so cool, great initiative. How long's that been running? Quite a few years
The whole
now.
time we've been open, so nearly 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how have you found people have responded to that in terms of their behaviour change?
I would say probably 98% of people are positive about it. Like every now and then you'll get someone who isn't based on Polytech campus, either working or studying, so they might not want to borrow a cup, but otherwise everyone else is more than happy to. Yeah. Or the odd person who doesn't quite understand why, but we're all very passionate about it, so we take the time to explain to them why we do what we do. Yeah.
That's so cool. So there's an educational piece.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, we want to teach people as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
we love it.
Oh, awesome. And what other initiatives have you thought about in terms of lessening environmental impact, still being financially viable?
All of our packaging, while we do still have takeaway packaging, all of it is compostable.
Oh.
So all of it can go in the organic bins which are around Polytech.
Yeah.
And then all of our leftover food goes to Kiwi Harvest, so they come every day. They pick up all of our
Kiwi
food.
Harvest?
Kiwi Harvest is it's an initiative in Dunedin. They pick up leftover food and distribute it to homeless shelters and stuff, people that actually need it. So rather than our leftover food going in the bin, it gets picked up the day after by them and they distribute it to people who need it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Cool. Okay, so you're thinking about packaging, thinking about food waste, cups.
Yeah.
That's a real big one as well.
Yeah, it's great. Like all of our salads, our hot food and our soup, we don't do takeaway for those because most of those containers would be plastic.
Yep.
But we're more than happy for people to borrow their soup bowl or their salad bowl and bring it back when they can.
Nice.
Also, people are more than welcome to bring their own containers in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something else that I've noticed, I'm vegan, but I noticed that you've got vegan options.
Yeah, gluten-free options, vegan
Yeah.
options, refined sugar-free options.
Yeah.
We cater to as many different types of foods as we can.
Yeah.
And everything is nut-free as well. We're a completely nut-free cafe.
Nice. And I know you have some, but you don't have a lot of meat.
No, we try not to.
Yeah.
Like the salad bar is always
Yeah.
completely meat-free. Yeah, so always vegetarian.
Yeah.
And we try for it to be vegan and gluten-free as often as possible,
Yeah.
with the option for like cheese as a topping.
Yeah.
But we try and keep the base salads like appealing to as many people as possible.
Yeah. And is that mainly from demand of people needing it, or is it from a sustainability point of view of trying to lessen your
Probably
impact?
a mixture of both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, makes less work for the kitchen too.
Yeah.
If everything is like more people can have it,
Yeah.
rather than making two options, they can make one and it's more appealing
Yeah.
to more people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes it more economically viable too,
Yeah,
right? Like you're
definitely.
being smart, but
Yeah.
then you're also thinking about
Customers.
the customers and the environment.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So this is such a great example of a triple bottom line business, which we'll talk more about. But essentially, like thinking about all those factors that come in to make a business successful, and not just from like a profit point of view, an economic point of view.
Yeah, from a customer and planet point of view too.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very important to us.
Yes. Planet, people, profit.
Yeah,
is
definitely.
often what comes in with the triple bottom line.
Yeah.
So, cool. Thanks so much for your time, Grace.
No problem. No problem at all.
It's been awesome to have you on here and sharing your knowledge with the team.
Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. Great. So these are our rubbish bins here, and often when people think about sustainability initiatives, waste and rubbish is one of the first things that comes into their mind. So yes, it's a big deal. It's not the only thing that we can do. We've talked about refusing or thinking about what we're buying in the first place. But it is an important process. It's kind of like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Like if we're going to use waste or we're going to produce waste, then let's at least look after it. Ideally, if we can have the ambulance at the top of the cliff, that would be better. But we're humans and we produce waste currently. That is our system that we're in. So we have multiple different bins to try and reduce the waste to landfill. So organic bin, this is one of our most important bins that we have here, and Grace was just talking about that with the cafe. And later on we're going to meet Mr. Finn Boyle, who is our composting man, and what happens when food goes into this bin. Another important aspect of this is that you can add in serviettes, potato starch trays, and wooden utensils. So it's not just the typical organic food that you think about, but that carbon or that brown material is really important for our compost, so we actually need that too. We have waste to landfill. So yeah, things like coffee cups, for example, unless they're fully compostable coffee cups, they often have a plastic lining on the inside of it. So some things you can think, oh yeah, you know, I can recycle those, but no, need to be very careful about what it's actually made of. And this is where the education becomes really interesting, because sometimes people want to do the right thing, but don't know or don't have enough education. And sometimes I see people standing here going, what goes in what bin, you know? And so it's not just about putting the infrastructure in place, like these solid bins, but it's also about the education around it, which is what these labels are trying to do. We have a couple more just around the corner. Glass and recycling as well. One thing just to note on the recycling is this idea of contamination. So if you have food or dirty recycled products and you put them inside a bin with a whole lot of clean recycled products, then when the truck comes along to pick up the recycled goods, they're actually going to get rid of and dump the whole bin, even if 90% of it's clean. If you put like your dirty tuna tin in here and it contaminates everything else, that whole bin is now non-recyclable. So again, this really important education piece. In terms of education, we've talked about, or the wider conversation is around, okay, Now we've got people on board with the fact that it's important to recycle and what we do with our waste, and probably the next biggest conversation in terms of waste is going to be around contamination. If it's not about refusing and not buying into those products in the first place. And of course, how we use our waste is also related to behaviour change, because sometimes people come up here and they actually just don't care. And they just throw things wherever, or they throw everything in the red waste landfill bin because it takes too much time or it's too hard to learn what to do about it. And I've run quite a few audits of these bins where we pull everything out and we actually look at where everything is going. And there's still a ways to go to get the whole community on board and using these bins in the correct way. A couple of other things we've done around this is we've stacked these bins up against a wall so you can't put rubbish in from the other side, because we want people to be able to see the signs at the front. And one time with students, we pulled all the bins from the hub into the middle area, so there was only one place that you could go put your waste, and that was all in the central place where we'd stolen all the bins. And then as people came up, we started to educate them and say, hey, do you know what goes where? So that was an intervention strategy that turned into also an educational strategy. Great, and let's just talk a little bit about repurposing again. So you can see this tabletop here, and I want you to have a guess at what this used to be. Come around here, you can see there's a big push sign on here. So yep, this used to be a door, and this used to be doors in some of the old classrooms of Otago Polytechnic, and then we repurposed that and turned it into tables. Some other things we've done in this space is we've changed all the lighting. So there used to be really big halogen long bulbs, and they got taken down, separated out, recycled, and now there's LED lighting. So that reduces our energy wastage. And we have also put in sensored lighting as well. So the lights only turn on when people are actually using and operating in the building. We have a staff member who is just focused completely on energy consumption and energy wastage in the Polytech. And he does a great job of measuring that. We also have a boiler, a wood burning boiler. And we were one of the first to convert from the old coal into wood, and that is where a lot of our energy comes from. And a lot of the wood that we use is offcuts from the carpentry department, where students are learning things. So in this way, it's looking at the cycle of what are we using, what are we producing, and where does that end up, and how can that be turned into more resources so that we don't have waste, right? So that our waste doesn't exist, it's all just resources. You can fill up your drink bottle here. It says that we've eliminated 113,000 plastic bottles going into landfill. I know at Humber you have this, but yeah, this is great. The more you can just bring your own drink bottle, then the less plastic, right, and the less resources we have to use. And Ron is shortly going to talk about the cultural significance of the carpet, but I'm going to talk about the sustainability aspect of it. And Otago Polytechnic commissioned a very specific company to start to look at these carpets, and they were really focused on balancing out their admissions. And so it's part of what they've been doing is using discarded fish nets used in the carpet manufacturing, and this protects the marine life and provides income for locals. Yarn scraps become raw materials for stuffed animals, so this is when they've taken carpets previously and they're converting it into other things. So in Thailand, this provides craftspeople with materials and income. And the adhesive squares used have backing glue on them instead of toxic glue. So this cuts out that toxicity and lowers the environmental footprint to 90% less than traditional adhesives. So that's pretty impressive. And an example, when we went back to the start of talking about our external environments our natural environments into the built environments. And what are we using in here? What are the decisions and choices and materials that we're using here that then has an impact out there? Because sometimes there's a disconnect of making that link, right? We could look around everything in here, and everything in here has originated from nature. Everything in here has originated from nature. So there has been an impact of what we have taken out of nature, and then also where our waste might go, perhaps when something breaks or we need to upgrade something. So in this way, we're actually not separate from the different environments. We're living in both environments, but it just feels a little bit different. And sometimes I've had students where they've been out in nature and they really get and they really understand that it's so important to look after that environment because they see it, right? And they're in it. But then sometimes when we come into a built environment, there's not the same mentality. There's a bit of a disconnect of, oh yeah, but I just need to buy something right now, or I don't think about the full cycle of it. But it has a very, very direct impact on that beautiful landscape that you want to look at and you want to be a part of and you want to recreate in. The last thing I'll talk about is the social sustainability. So we'll just take a look at how people are using this space. So you can see that it is a pretty open space and there's little areas set up for connection. So lots of little couches and areas to try and help people initiate conversation or feel connected or feel open in this space. We have lots of student success support services down the end here. So again, it's all about trying to provide a safe space for people to be in where they feel really comfortable and also connected, right? Because as humans, being connected is an essential part for our well-being, our haora, which is our overall well-being, our mental health, our physical health, social health. Yeah, so that brings us to the close of our tour of the hub, and yeah, perhaps we might actually go outside and show you a few things of what we're doing outside for our sustainability initiatives. This is an initiative here we have to lower our carbon footprint. So we have Polytech Bikes, which are campus bikes, and we just store them here. You can go get a key from customer services and then take this to cruise around town, and hopefully that encourages people to be able to walk here or take the bus into Polytechnic and then use a bike to cruise around, and staff and students can just use this whenever they please, and then we maintain them every few months as well. We have some other great initiatives outside, some gardens and some trees. So let's take a look at our campus outside. Here we are outside, and I'm here to show you some campus gardens. We have a horticulture department where students can learn all things horticulture, which means that students get to practice in this space, but also staff members have a lot of knowledge. And this particular garden down the back here, this is one for tea. So you can go get some hot water from inside at the cafe, come out here, pick some fresh herbs, and then make yourself a delicious, yummy, and nutritional, medicinally fulfilling cup of tea. We have other gardens that are for vegetables or for fruit. We have bees on site, and there is definitely some principles of permaculture here. And permaculture is essentially a concept in gardening where there is no waste and everything gets renewed and recycled as part of a system. And it really values that there is humans in this system as well. So how do humans operate and work with the outdoor environment? So an example for you is Permaculture Rings. So if you're thinking about having a garden in your house, for example, the area closest to your house would be the things that you pick most often. So if you think about your herbs or perhaps a lettuce, for example, they're the things that stay nice and close so that you can just nip out and go get it. Bigger vegetables or things that need more space would be in the middle ring. So that could be like your carrots or onions and things like that. And then in your last space, your much wider ring, you would have fruit trees because you go there not very often. So it's all to do with how humans interact and use the space. And in the background there you can just see some fruit trees that we have right in the middle of campus. Again, students learn how to prune those fruit trees and look after them, and then we get to come along and just pick fresh apples and pears when they are in season. We also have some composting bins down the back here, and later on we're going to meet Finn, who I mentioned before, and talk about some composting things. This wee classroom just behind us is called Studio 56. This was built by carpentry students that we have learning how to build on site here, but it was designed by architectural students, and they tried to minimize the impact ecologically as much as possible. So it is solar powered, it collects water off the roof, and it starts to bring in that social sustainability because inside here it is, well actually it's slightly different now, but it used to be used as a sensory space where you could go in and feel lots of different textures and smell lots of different things, and that was provided to lower stress levels for students and staff, a place to calm and relax and recenter. And actually just reminds me, up here it's not very windy today, but on the top of this building we have a windmill, and that is what supplements our power that we have on site along with the wood burner, and then also power we get from the grid, the wider national grid. And in the South Island there's only renewable energy, so there's a lot of dam and hydro energy in the South Island of New Zealand. Yeah, and that windmill up there has a very special design. It's designed by somebody in Dunedin, and it's only got one blade, and it's very, very flexible, and it can move around in the wind. So what it means by not being so fixed is that depending on where the wind is coming from, it can move ever so slightly to adapt and be flexible within the environment so it can get the maximum capacity and maximum output. So it's a very clever design, and again another great example of how we can learn to work with nature. So as opposed to just having a built thing that we put in place and expecting nature to work around it, learning how nature works and how we can go meet it. And the windmill is a great example. So are the gardens, and so is permaculture principle. How can we work with nature? And that also brings me to another question that I'll just leave you on for now, and that's, are we a part of nature, or are we apart from nature? So are humans nature, or are we separate from? And we're going to start to explore that when we start to look a little bit more at environmental philosophy. So thanks for coming with me on the outdoor garden tour, and yeah, see you soon.